Welcome to Metro Pulse Mobile. This is where we highlight the people doing meaningful work right here in our city. Today, I've got Tommy Foxworth with me with the Tommy Foxworth Agency, and we are going to get into what they do, how they got here, and what's actually working for them right now. Tommy, welcome to this episode. How are you?
Doing well, Daniel. Thank you for having me, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Tell us a little bit about you and what you and your agency does.
Yeah, we basically do everything but health. So we'll do, home, auto, life, boat, umbrella, you name it, we kind of do it, except for health insurance. We're 2 years in as independents. I started 12 years ago with farmers, went with Farmers Agent for 10 years, started my own independent agency. 2 years ago, my son partnered with me, and it's been a blessing ever since.
So, working in this industry and 10 years, obviously working with a previous company and now starting independent, I'm curious for maybe someone watching out there who's trying to figure out a life change, a career change, or maybe it's staying in the same industry but moving to a different company or starting one that, independently on their own. What were some of the things that you were looking at when you were debating, hey, do I go independent versus staying where I am?
Farmers. Yeah, I started a farmers agency, and the easy part about that is, you get branding, you get advertising, the farmer's name comes with you. So that was great. I feel like I did it the right way. Starting with them, it's very hard to start independent because when you start independent, you got to go get these deals. You got to go broker with Progressive. You got to go broker with GEICO, and they're not going to just do it with somebody who's just starting off. So that's the hard part. When you start independent, they won't work with you unless you got a book of business or you can show history of doing business and things like that. So for me, it was kind of a blessing. I started with farmers, and then, and the reason you want to go from farmers to independent, with farmers, I was very restricted on what we can do. If the home's going up, I don't have a lot of place to move it. Auto's going up, I have nowhere to move it. So you're stuck selling that one product and hoping they don't go up. And, they tend to do that. Going independent, I'd done it long enough. So it was worth the risk, worth the chance. And I just rolled the dice and, started talking to people, talked to Progressive, talked to GEICO, talked to MetLife, Travelers, and was fortunate enough to be able to, get the appointments I needed to start doing that. And it's just a game changer. If somebody's autos are going up, it's nice to be able to, ride a GEICO, move from GEICO to Progressive, or whatever the case may be, to help them out.
So flexibility in terms of sourcing vendors and sourcing products factored into kind of your decision?
Yes, and that's and in this market, in this wind market that we're in, you just have to be able to do that because companies just decide overnight. Obviously it's not overnight, but it's took customers, it feels like overnight. Hey, we don't want any more business in this area, and when an insurance company doesn't want you, they let you know it by the price is just going to go here, and you just got to build a shop and move somewhere else. So either they're, if you're with a captive agency that is tough in this market, because insurance is so ever changing. So it's nice to be able to, have the ability to change it here versus, them going outside and changing it. And with that comes a lot of things. We're hiring now, because it's just a lot of work at renewal.
So with the independence, you also get, I'm assuming, a freedom in terms of territory coverage area as well. Does that factor into?
Well, yeah,
or does it still kind of stay where you were?
Well, I'm licensed in Alabama, so I can write anywhere in Alabama. And with farmers, I can do the same thing. I can still, write anywhere, in Alabama. Independent, same thing. And we're moving into Mississippi now as we speak. I'm talking, I've got my contracts, set up, and we'll be moving to Mississippi next. And I could have done that with farmers, if I wanted to, but it's harder, with farmers. You got one farmer's agent in this territory, one farmer's agent in this territory, one farmer's agent in this territory. So you don't want to step on toes. I'm not going to go into another farmer's agency and try to, get business there, so to speak. But with independent, it's different because you got all, every independent agent is different. In independence, it's just the more you can broker with, the better you're going to be. So, I got customers that I write here and they have second homes in Mississippi, second homes in Florida. They're moving to Mississippi. They got friends in Mississippi, family in Mississippi, or what have you. So it's well worth it to branch out and, right in that area. The tricky part there is you got to know the area, know what you're doing. You would not want to go from somewhere north and start writing business in this South Alabama part because it's definitely different. Same thing with Florida. That's why I'm a little hesitant to move into Florida, but we're definitely going to try to move in there next.
So, with your background at Farmers, 10 years before going independent, do you feel like that was kind of a gradual? I mean, yes, a lot of I'm coming from the framework here about entrepreneurship and starting your own business, whatever it is. In your case, this industry's insurance. Do you think having that kind of runway, that 10-year runway, education, connections, customers, client base, was a more gradual process that kind of naturally moved you into, okay, hey, now I'm looking at this? Like, could you
Yeah,
imagine going back 12 years ago and going, hey, I'm just going straight independent? Do you think
never
that
would have
would have,
made it. It'd have been more challenging.
I
First
got
of
you.
all, I would have had only three people to broker with that have been harder to do. That's when you go under an aggregate, and I get some big company that can get me, appointments, and I start working with them that way. That cuts into your profit. You're better off. I mean, it's hard to do it the way I did it, but you're better off doing that because it's like you said, when I went to Farmers, they provided everything. And when you go independent, you got nothing. I mean, it's just like, go here, learn how to do it. But with
Right.
Farmers, they train you, and when I started my own agency with Farmers, I had a guy that I could talk to anytime I wanted to, and he was great. He helped everything I went. They sent me out to Michigan to a school for a week. I did that twice. And I mean, the stuff you learn there, I mean, it's amazing. Consultation selling, sitting down in people's living rooms, talking about insurance. I remember the first thing they made me do was I had to stand up. I'd been in the golf business for 20 years. Went to insurance, didn't know a thing about it. I just know I had a buddy of mine that owned an insurance agent. I said, you know what? He has more time than I do, more free time, and more money. So I mean, what? Let me just do that. And I jumped in with both feet, and I stood in front of a room with 30 agents, all 20 to 30-year agents. And they showed me my home policy and they said, explain to me everything you have. And I remember looking at it, and I looked out at the audience. I mean, I'm not a great public speaker anyway, but I looked at the guy and I was like, man, I can't even read this thing. And he said, good. He goes, I want you to remember that when you're talking to somebody, when you're 20 years in and you're telling them about their home policy and their auto policy and this and that, and this covers, remember it's weird stuff. It's a weird language.
Right.
And then he walked me through it. And it was just game changer for me, because before that I didn't even want to talk to people about insurance. I don't even know exactly what some of this stuff.
Right.
But then once you learn it and you can talk it, I was talking to someone the other day, 75-year-old widow, and she was like, this is the first time I've ever really truly feel like I could shop my own insurance. And I was like, oh, that's great. Just don't.
Right.
But it's good to do that, for
Right.
people. Never, and I would have never learned that. I mean, I might have learned it, but it would have been in a different way, in a longer process. Starting with Farmers was great for me.
Before we keep going with some of the current stuff you're doing with your own agency, your independent agency, you mentioned your background before you jumped into
Yeah,
this, with golf.
yeah.
Are there any things that you took with you or that helped you transition in this industry, that being in the golf industry previous and prior to being in insurance?
Yeah, tons. With the golf business, everybody thinks, golf business is great. You're a golfer, you're a golf pro. You're not really a pro golfer. You're running a pro shop, is what you're doing. So you're dealing with, you know, thousands of people on a golf course that are playing golf. If you've ever played golf, you have bad days. So they'll come in and take it out on the pro shop staff. They'll come in and let's cut in front of me. And they'll just, I mean, just one F-bomb after the other. And you learn how to deal with irate people, irate customers, dealing with the public every single day, all day long. So I remember when I first got in insurance, the guy that was training with Farmers said, you just got to be able to handle adverse situations. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I can handle that. And, I And we walked through some scenarios because we did role play, and I
Right.
did it, and he was like, wow. I was like, yeah. I said, man, this is nothing. I said, you go to work at a golf course, man. See the people that come in after they shot the worst round of their life. They're in a terrible mood, and their waitress checked on them yet. That's that's dealing with an irate customer.
See, you just needed golfers like me who
Yeah.
knows they're terrible. And so we go
And
in
it
with
doesn't bother
no
them when they play bad.
expectations.
That's
No
that's right. That's right.
expectations. So then there
That's
is no
right.
frustration. You just go like, hey, I had a good time, you know?
Yeah,
Like it
that's
is
right.
what
And
it
I
is.
taught golf forever, and now people always call me up for lessons, and I do. So I'll say this. I'll say, look, here's the best thing you can do, best lesson you'll ever have. Just don't care. Go out there
Right.
and have fun. You're
Yeah.
playing golf. The scenery's great. You're hitting it. The ball doesn't matter how you hit it, but people want to play good. Yes, I get it. But
That's
the
funny.
best way to handle golf is just like you do, and that's how I do now. Just look. I'm gonna play bad. I'm just gonna enjoy my time out.
Yeah. I definitely have that philosophy with golf. It is
Yeah,
just it's never been a sport I've been
it's
good
the
at.
hardest game
I
to play.
enjoy it.
Yeah,
I have childhood memories. My grandfather used to be, I don't know what his official job title was. He was retired, but like
yeah,
he's some kind of golf pro or worked at the
yeah.
golf course
Cool.
or whatever in Mobile and at Brookley back
Yeah, I
at that
remember
golf
Golf
course.
Time, Jeff
Yeah.
Brooklyn. Yeah,
And he made me my own custom set of golf clubs, and I would go out there when I was really young and hit at the driving range, and I loved it, and I'd carry around my little bag around his
yeah.
yard and
So that's cool. That's the memories. That's why I still love golf, and that's why I still
right,
want my kid. My grandkids are going to play golf. We're just going to go out there and have fun
have
because
fun.
that's basically all I use golf for now. Is me and the boys we go play.
Right,
And it's funny because they're still competitive, and I am too. But I've learned to just, hey, I'm not going to let golf is not going to dictate my mood.
right,
It's too
right.
nice. You're not working. You're playing golf.
So you took your experience in the golf world and in the golf business. Customer relations
Yeah,
obviously was something you were
yeah,
doing. It's universal,
yeah.
whether you're running a restaurant, you're running an
It is.
insurance agency, you're running a company. How do
Yeah,
you deal with customers?
it is. It'll
You
never go
have
away.
It never goes away. You'll
Never go
always
away.
have an opportunity to apply that, in
Yeah,
any business, and in this case, in the insurance industry. When you got into this, you did your 10 years. You said I'm going independent. You brought up this earlier, and I'm curious what was your mindset when you were talking about bringing in your son as you were doing all of this? What was kind of your thinking behind that and the inspiration behind
yeah. At some point, I'm gonna hopefully retire and sell this place or what have you. Gage wanted to go play college baseball, two major arm injuries, didn't work out. He was going to try to end up at Troy and, actually study insurance because he never wanted to sell insurance. No one does. I mean, no one grows up thinking, I'm going to go sell insurance. He was like, there's no way in the world I'm ever doing that. Well, we were at lunch one day and a guy came over and after lunch, he was talking about, this, that, and the other. And he said, I am going to call you Monday. I want to do business with you and, whatnot. And then after lunch, he's like, I think I could do that. I was like, yeah, you're not selling insurance. You're basically helping people out. You explain the policy, you explain this, it works out or it doesn't. I mean, if it ends up they're better where they are or some, another company, you let them know that and life goes on and that's just how it is. And so he was like, I think he wanted to do that. So once he got over that hurdle and wanted to do it, bringing him in was a no brainer, because, he's probably the best producer I've ever had just because, he knows he has ownership in it. And going from farmers to independent, I lost a lot. A lot of the stuff with farmers stayed with farmers. So I had this almost like starting over. So I didn't have the payroll budget that I had before. So I said, look, we're going to, if we do this, it's going to be better for you and me, especially you in the long run, because you can retain customers. Farmers is hard to retain customers. Price goes up, they start falling off the back end. Renewals, independent world, you can keep them a lot longer. So, it's beneficial, but I said I need 1 year of working twice what you need to do, and you're getting paid for probably half of what you would have got.
it? A good old
And he
family
said,
discount.
yeah, and I said, I said, look, I'm gonna be here working 10, 12 hours a day the first year. All I'm asking you to do is do this. He did it, but he was happy, but that also allowed him to learn a lot, and people respected him for it, and it was good for him. Man, it would have been hard to tell anybody else, hey, this is what we're going to do. You're going to work twice as much. I'm going to pay you half what I normally would pay you. You cool with that?
Can you wait 90 days for your next paycheck, please?
That's right. We might not be able to pay in March, but look, man, I promise by January we'll be paying.
we'll, we'll, we'll get you stuff for
Hard to
Christmas.
hard to pull that off with too
Right,
many people, man. But he was
right.
willing to do that and willing to learn. So that made it easier because honestly, that's why you don't see many people going from captive to independent because you do take a pretty big chunk that you lose and you got to gain it back over time. It takes about 2 years.
So during that process, how did the expectation you had for how long it would take meet with the reality of what it actually took in terms of timeline as well as kind of your metrics or numbers you were trying to hit? Did it kind of go in line with what you thought it would, or did it go
It
better,
did.
worse?
It got way better after a year. The first 4 months, I worried. I was like, wow, because I'm no marketing, no this, no that. I wasn't getting. Farmers had free marketing. They have these things called FFQs where if they call into farmers and they're looking for a home, it drops into my agency. Or there's a couple of agencies that were doing well and they spread them out. So you get free leads. So I'm never forget my first month independent. The very first month, I was like, you know, where's the business going to come? It's not coming in. No one's calling.
Right.
But I did some marketing with the OVM agency, and I did some other things. And second month it started coming in. So the first 4 months it was like below what I expected. Because I expected to just continue, and I had a map, drawn out what I think we can do. And at the end of the year, we were a little short, but not much. And then we're in our second year now, almost at the end of our second year since doing this, and it's starting to exceed a little bit. So it's doing well. It's doing really really well. Like
So,
anything else in business, it's never as easy as you think it's going to be.
right. So I asked that question because I also wanted to follow up with this question, which is what was your expectation and hope for working with your son, and how has that experience actually panned out in terms of this timeline that you're running parallel, transition from farmers to independent. You're trying to figure out, can I meet these goals? Little short year one, starting to exceed for year two. And then in tandem, in parallel, you've got this relationship. It's always been father son, but now it's, boss, employee, partner, all those things. And it adds a different dynamic to your
A whole
relationship. How
different
has that
dynamic.
been?
That's been great. I will say this: there's been some tough times. There's been some times that I've come in there and because he's gotten the grasp of it. So he's basically runs all new business. So he does new business. But I'll still go in there and say, hey, I think we should call this person or do this or do that. It's a dad telling a kid.
Gotcha.
But luckily, our relationship is good enough where we both understand that dynamic. And as long as I don't walk in there like I'm his dad, and I do it out of mutual, because he's earned that. I hate to say it, but he really has earned that. But every now and then I'll say something, are you pouting? Or whatever. And we'll battle it out for a minute. But at the end of
Right.
the day, we both know that, look, I've been doing this a while. You're learning. Tell him all the time, I'm a 12-year agent. If I sit down at lunch with a 20-year agent, I learn something every single time. Every time. When I'm a 20-year agent, I'll still be learning because I'll be sitting down with a 30-year agent that I learn things from. Because you never stop learning in this business. So he's got a grasp on that, fortunately. Because it's hard. It's big. That was my biggest fear. People, said, "Was you sure you want your son, working for you?" It's different.
Right.
It's a different. It can be challenging, but it's worked out great. He's learned a lot, and we've both learned the dynamics of how we're going to handle each other. When I go into dad mode and he goes into kid mode.
Well, you have those adjustments, like I said, and you have the different layers of the relationship and different roles, boss and employee, partner, or in your case, father son. And I I know from you and I and our kids in the past, we've had the coach player relationship as well, which probably gave you a little bit of a
Absolutely.
preview of a different dynamic than just father to
Yeah.
son, which
Yeah.
I would think probably helped a little bit in
Yeah.
some of that transition as well.
Yeah.
Um, tell me about the mindset of the growth mindset that you have in terms of always looking to learn and passing that mindset on to Gage and all of your team.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and on the team, yes, you're especially right. Because I tell everybody, not just Gage, that look, here's the thing about this business. Everybody comes in, or everybody has their way, but it's ever changing, and there's always companies coming in, coming out, moving in, moving out. So most people get stuck in their ways, and they want to just do this or sell this or write this or this is their mindset with all that. But you got to be ahead of everybody. You got to when new markets coming. I've got a couple new markets coming in this fall. You got to be studying it, learning it, um, be the best at it. And it's amazing how it's just, when you do that, and then you transfer it to customers and talking to customers, it separates you. But it's hard. It's a constant um, wanting to learn. You got to want to learn. There's things I'll learn about just say a commercial umbrella policy that I'll read on or do a webcast on and learn, and then I try to transfer that to everybody. And that's what I told him. I said, look, I've been doing this 12 years. I come here and I talk to you like I know everything, but the truth is I don't. I learn stuff every single day too. So once you let your mind open up to that because everybody, when you're in a field, you want to feel like you know it. But you can always learn. I can learn
Right.
something from you today, or from an agent tomorrow that I'm sitting with. A tactic or something about a policy, or how you write a policy, or how you the way something is covered in a commercial lines, or what have you. It's especially with insurance, you're just constantly learning. So, I've been lucky enough to sit down with some 30-year agents. I sat down with Lad Drago with State Farm a long time ago, and he gave me some great advice. It's you can't learn enough.
Have you seen as you almost 2 years into this independent journey with your agency? Have you seen technology? AI is kind of all the rave right now. Have you seen any of that kind of create additional changes to the industry, whether it's how policies are factored because they're using AI to kind of be able to forecast in real time, or maybe
Yeah.
it's customer service interactions and being able to deploy different technologies? Have you seen any of that kind of technology that's really, constantly changing and improving and getting better and better influence or have an effect on the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're crazy if you don't think AI is going to be a part of everything coming up. It's so, no one wants to hear it. No one wants to do it. It might take jobs, maybe, and that's one of my biggest fears is that going to take jobs away? And the answer is no. It's not going to take a job away, because you still have to make big decisions, and AI is not perfect, but and AI, like you said, is constantly changing. It's going to get better and better. It's in its infant stage, not right now, but every year it's getting better and better. And there's things we're already doing, through AI. We have an answer service that if we can't get to a phone, it answers. This is the Foxworth Agency. It's polite, because they I set it up. You can set it the way you want to. And I said, look, customer service, friendliness, that's our biggest thing. As long as we do that, we're okay. And my AI will, answer it, get the information from them, and then direct the call to Gage or me, or somebody up front. We have a task, a group text that everybody sees. So it'll send the conversation into a group text, and then it'll send it to whoever's email it needed to go to. So with the group text, we all see it. With the email, the person who needed to see it sees it. So it's something that doesn't get lost there. And then there's also, we use a lot of AI for automation stuff, for where if you call me up for a home quote tomorrow, you're going to get stuff from us for the next week, or actually the next month, and it just leads that. And then that's getting better and better all the time. So right now we have some really cool stuff, that 5 years ago we didn't have. So when I hire people and they come in and they see, as soon as they call us for a quote, this starts happening. And when you read the first one, the look on the face is always awesome. They're like, wow, that is so cool. I mean, it's just, it's just, and I would never have the time to do all that, and it's amazing how some people still think that we did do it. And they call me up like, man, that's amazing. You did it. You do that for every customer. I'm like, well, I mean, it's automated. I mean,
Yes.
I did it once, and now it happens, which is really cool. But like you said, it's ever changing. You can't just say, okay, cool, we're done. That looks great.
Right.
We got to tweak
Right.
it and, learn and do different things. And, AI can be great, I think, but it can also be bad.
Right.
I'm not,
Well, it's like any tool, and that's how I view it. Any kind of tool or system technology, it's really kind of in the beholder, right? It's how you deploy it. It's how you use it. You can obviously use it really well, and it sounds like you guys are deploying it in a very cool way and,
trying,
and
yeah.
helping, yeah, with your customer service and service delivery, etc. And obviously, you can always have the negative experience, which no one wants to have, by not deploying it in the best way possible. I want to
Yeah.
kind of wrap this up and close with this kind of question for you. Um, as you look at the state of play, insurance specific to your area of the country, there on the central Gulf Coast, the Mobile, South Alabama market, moving into Mississippi, at some point moving into the panhandle of Florida. What are you looking at here over the next, say, 2 to 3 years in terms of insurance? What could people be expecting in terms of, what's available, kind of policies or anything like that? What does the industry look like to you over the next couple of years?
It's softening up here. In the last 2, 3 years, we've been in what they call a hard market, which is where no one wants business. No one wants to do the reinsurance programs. And that's what causes, in our area, that's what causes big premiums. Lloyd's London, whoever it might be, doesn't want to come in and reinsure all these carriers, then they're taking on a lot more risk than they want to take on. So it's developed a hard market where they don't want business. It's high, but it's softening up a little bit. You got these reinsurers back in the game wanting it. You got carriers moving in. Florida just got 8 new carriers last year. Alabama's, which actually Gage is on the board. Believe it or not, he's on the board, and they asked me if they could ask him, and he's on the board for the Alabama Independence Association of Alabama, which is really cool at his age to be on something like that. First couple meetings way over his head. I mean, really honest, meeting senators, congressmen, and way over his head. But he's done great with that, and that's actually helped him along. And they're actually working on, he knows more about this than I do. And that's where what we talked about earlier, the father-son relationship. I got to remember, hey, look, he's doing good. He was talking some other day, and I was like, really? I mean, I'm learning with him.
Right, right.
Which is really cool. But, so we're trying to follow suit what Florida did, and they're trying to get 14. Their goal is 14 new carriers. So if they get 14 new carriers in Alabama, maybe not all of them right on the coast, but if we can get, 5, 6, 7 of them right on the coast, that's a great thing because it helps. Competition is a
Lower
wonderful
everything.
thing for everybody. So
Awesome.
hopefully, that's where we're headed towards. Get these carriers in the next, 6 to 9 months, and it'd be a great thing. And it makes it. And that's kind of what I love about my job. It's ever evolving. Now I'm working on trying to get points with new carriers, new business, learning new things. I'm helping customers out even more. Saying, hey, we got this now. So it makes it fun, and it's always shifting. It seems like it's always either going like this hard or it's softening up and doing this. It's never just
Right. Well, thank you for joining the Metro Pulse Mobile, and we appreciate you coming on. For everyone who's watching and listening to this episode, how can people get in touch with you to learn more about your business and maybe get an insurance policy?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, you can call me anytime, 251-930-1397. That's our best office number. Or you can email the office line, info@thefoxworthagency.com, or directly to me, Tommy, at the Foxworth Agency.
And your website's the
Yeah,
foxworthagency.com.
thefoxworthagency.com. That's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. We've enjoyed having you, and we appreciate you sharing your thoughts, your insights, and peeling the curtain back a little bit on your business and the industry. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Tanner.